I'm here today with our Managing Director of HVS Charleston, Heidi Nelsen. I'm excited to be talking to her about everything that's happening in her neck of the woods. And Heidi, thanks for joining me today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Rod. Happy to talk about Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston has been my home for quite some time now, and I'm very lucky to call this city my home. Charleston's been ranked #1 in the US by Condé Nast for the past decade, and it's also been ranked #1 in the world twice by Condé Nast. So it's great that we have such a strong leisure background here in this market. It's really helped us throughout this past year to be able to maintain occupancy and rate and come out stronger. But the last few years over Charleston, we've seen declines in occupancy and rate, primarily due to the fact that we've had a lot of storms in the fall of each year. This started back in 2015. We had what was called the once in a 1,000-year flood, which was about 8 days of just downpouring of rain. Then followed in 16 was Matthew, 17 Irma, 18 we had both Florence and Michael, and then 2019 was Dorian. And even though some of those hurricanes did not hit us and impact us directly in that way, Dorian and Florence back in 2018 and 19 caused citywide evacuations. So hotels were forced to close for several days. The impact of Dorian was estimated to be about $117 million in visitor spending for South Carolina. And College of Charleston actually projected that there was about a $59 million loss due to Dorian in 2019, and that we had about $111 million loss due to Hurricane Florence in 2018. So that's why you'll see a decline in occupancy and rate over the last few years prior to the pandemic for the Charleston market. But since then, we're starting to come out of it, projecting a pretty good 2020 until the pandemic hit. And as you can see in our projection for the going forward, we have ourselves coming back pretty strong. In 2020, Charleston started to come back in the summer. 4th of July was pretty strong after the beaches reopened in June. And we were lucky to have a lot of areas that have homes like Kiowa Island, Wild Dunes, where a lot of people were coming and spending a week since they were not going into the office anymore. They were working from home, but working in different locations. So that was great for us. And then, however, in July, once states such as New York and other New England states started putting a mandatory quarantine on anyone visiting South Carolina, that definitely had more of a negative impact on us. And we saw occupancy go back down in the fall. The one great thing was, for the first time in 5 years, we didn't have a storm. So we had a little bit of a benefit there in the fall.
That was some great insight, Heidi. Thanks for talking us through what happened during the pandemic. Why don't you give us some insights on your forecast going forward and the recovery for the Charleston market going forward?
Sure, absolutely. So we see pretty strong recovery here in Charleston. Like I had previously mentioned, the last few years weren't as strong due to those storms. So when you forecast September and October and put them back to 2015 levels, we had stronger occupancy than was even noted here at the roughly 77% in 2017. We did have a lot of new supply entering the market as well during that time, particularly in downtown Charleston, as well as in Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant received a lot of new supply over the last couple of years. So going forward, we see this market rebounding pretty strong. We definitely saw it the other weekend. We had the PGA tournament out at Kiowa. So the PGA tournament, compared to 2019 levels for that same weekend, we saw in downtown Charleston, we saw a 26% increase over 2019, same weekend, in ADR, and still a little decline in occupancy, but only 2% over that same period. And countywide, though, we saw a 13% increase in ADR and a 5% increase in occupancy. So this is all great going forward, and having these big events kind of coming back has, been a key starter for this market. We also have going on right now through mid-June is the Spoleto Festival, which is about a 3-week festival that's generally held every May. Obviously it was canceled last year, but now it's back with just limited capacity. The Cooper River Bridge Run, which is usually held the first weekend of April every year, has been pushed back to late September this year. That also has about 40,000 participants every year. So some of these big events coming back to the city bode well for us. We are also lucky that we are not a big convention market. So we have more Smurf groups, fun festivals and stuff like that, that really drive demand. Also continuing to drive demand is we have a strong military market here. The Medical University, MUSC, opened a new children's hospital and women's pavilion in February of 2020, just pre-pandemic. So that's been doing well. A lot of pharmaceutical, Boeing, and then obviously Volvo, which is a big demand generator for us the last few years, which has these numbers that I'm showing you are Charleston County, but the Tri-County area includes Dorchester and Berkeley as well. So Berkeley County has really benefited off of Volvo coming in. And Somerville has had, I believe, just in the beginning of 2020, had 4 new hotels open just before the pandemic. So there's a lot of demand coming in from these outside of the downtown area right now. So going forward, we do see these numbers coming back, occupancy back by 2022, 23, and we see pre-rates coming back by 2023 as well. This is also supported by, we got a new airline just announced, Breeze Airways, that introduced a service to 11 new cities nonstop for us, new flights total. Given the fact that we have so many leisure demand generators has boded really well for the market. A lot of hotels took the opportunity to renovate during the pandemic. The King Charles Inn had sold prior to the pandemic, and they closed right around March when everyone else closed, and they decided to go ahead and start the renovations. They just opened up last month, rebranded as the Ryder Hotel. The DoubleTree had closed prior to the pandemic and opened up in July of last year, now as the Hotel Emmeline. And we're also seeing a little bit of new supply come in, definitely not at the levels we were seeing prior, and some of that will be held back. But we did just celebrate the groundbreaking of the new Moxie Hotel, which is TMG and the Terra Group. They broke ground last month on that. So we're seeing new development in the area, which is great going forward, but also not as much as we had been seeing, which will help support us get to the occupancy and rate levels that we have projected.
Heidi, it's obvious you really have your finger on the pulse of the Charleston County market. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today about everything happening in your region. Certainly encourage any of our viewers to reach out to Heidi if you want to learn more. She'd be happy to talk to you and help you. Thank you, Heidi.
Absolutely, thank you.